Well, Brock Lesnar had fun last week, and the fans yucked it up with him as his pants tore, and we got to see his blue underwear, and Lesnar was laughing and slapping hands and goes, "Blue undies," or something like that. This week, they wanted to, and maybe they would have done it anyway, let people know he's a badass who destroys people. And this week, he was going to destroy Michael Cole, but the heroic Corey Graves came to his aid, and Corey Graves took a couple F5s, and then he left the building. And the match is on, and we heard for a couple hours Cole talk about the devastation over a decade ago at SummerSlam when Lesnar destroyed Cena. He talked about how tough it was to watch that. He said, "I don't know if my good friend John Cena has a chance, if this is a Lesnar who's going to show up." I actually think this is the kind of hype that they needed to do for this match. Given the place where people are with Cena, an aging, retiring, beloved legend, and Lesnar, this returning, crazed, dominant former UFC champion, heavyweight force. You want to tell a story that's not meta, that's not about numbers, it's not about legacy even. They could have done that. They could have talked about what's at stake in this match, but frankly, there's not a lot other than physical well-being for Cena up against Lesnar wanting to reassert that he is the destroyer of people like Cena. So I give this a thumbs up for concept and execution. How about you?
Yeah, I think it was put together well. It seems like they're trying to frame this as like a rubber match of sorts because they really focused on, the first encounter when Lesnar returned from UFC, and then the one-sided affair that you referenced at SummerSlam in 2014, and now they're presenting this as like a third encounter. So who comes away with the career win total, and I think it was the right call. I think people they've really embraced the Super Cena aspect of John Cena during this retirement tour. He's not getting mixed reactions anymore. It seems like everywhere they go is pretty much universally supportive of John Cena, and I think Lesnar has become a very easy guy to hate, and that's goes beyond the ring. And so I think they've set themselves up for a match with a very clear heel and a very clear hero, and I think John Cena will play that up. He's going to be probably really leaning into being the nearly retired, broken down wrestler throughout this match, and so I'm very curious to see with it being the opener. I think that leaves a lot of possibilities open for how they proceed with this and how they set up the finish and which direction they go. I think, the crowd pleasing choice would be, overcoming the odds. John Cena gets the final bow against Brock Lesnar on his way out the door, but it depends on how they plan on using Lesnar now until WrestleMania, which I assume he'll still be around for. So I think there's enough going on in terms of the storytelling here, and if you're into the meta aspects of it, what this means for John Cena and Brock Lesnar and for the rest of the year and beyond. I think it makes it an unpredictable outcome. So I think they've done a nice job here.
Yeah. Lesnar being in the opener, so we can do all the pre-show stuff that ESPN asks of him, and then wrestle, and then get on that jet plane and get home before, presumably before Drew McIntyre and Cody wrestle. Although maybe he'll stick around for some angle that dictates the outcome of a match later in the night too. Can't rule that out.
I think Brock gets the earliest flight out of Indianapolis that's humanly possible for him.
Well, he'll probably have his just private jet waiting for him. I don't know that he's going to be going through baggage claim and walking through a public airport with the money he's made and how private he likes to be. He kind of alluded to that when he's like, "You wouldn't have been a top star Cena if I hadn't left WWE, even when he was a rising star, because it just wasn't the lifestyle he wanted, even with all the money." It being the opener is good. I wrote an editorial on PWTorch.com this week, and it's the featured spotlight article just saying that Cody's been forgotten, overlooked in this hype. Kind of stemmed from the ESPN media call. Kind of sparked it, although a lot of thoughts in my mind about this. But when they just said, talked about the main event being John Cena and Brock Lesnar, and not mentioning Cody during a conference call where these, you always get the executives who are quote unquote fans, but their memory is like WrestleMania 2. And you're not sure how plugged in they are to the current product, but they know who John Cena is because of Peacemaker and all the other stuff. And they know who Brock Lesnar is because UFC. So that becomes the main event. And I was like, come on, Cody's your full-time guy. He's a champion. Cena hasn't mentioned his name since, Cody beat him, and Cena's just, Yeah, ungraciously just moves on, intentionally or negligently. I leave it open to both possibilities, but it doesn't come without a price if you don't treat Cody as the biggest deal on the show. He doesn't have to be the biggest deal for you to treat him as the biggest deal. You can still promote the hell out of Cody,
Right.
Cena and Lesnar. Promote the hell out of it, but make sure your words say our championship is always the most important thing. Cody is our top star. Cena's a legend. He's retiring. Lesnar's done a lot, but he's not, he's a special attraction. Cody's our top star, and Drew wants to be that top star. They didn't tell that story at all. I thought the angle, we'll get to it. I don't want to get into it, but we'll get into the contract signing angle later. But I like, this is all going full circle. I encourage people to check out my editorial. I'm proud of it. Covered a lot of topics about the Cena-Cody dynamic on air and tried to kind of decode it. And also talked about the marketing of WWE historically and how they pay a price, including just the cratering of viewership after that first Netflix series, which I think is in part because all they did is told everyone to show up for a party, and we're going to tell you all the big stars are people who are only here this week. But, some of you, maybe you want to tune in next week to see Rhea Ripley and Cody as an afterthought. It's not the only reason. The ratings would have dropped anyway, but they should be fighting that tendency and making people believe today's stars are the top stars. So I'm glad that they framed and promised Cody and Drew is the main event, whether it was intentional or just the only practical thing they could do because of logistics demands from Lesnar to get the hell out of there quickly. It's better off, and Cody deserves to be the main event at WrestlePalooza. Flat out, it's his company. He's the one who's headlined an era of WWE that has moved into 2-night stadium shows and unprecedented revenue, unprecedented ticket prices, great attendance, and frankly, a better stretch than Cena ever had in a 2-year period. So as they talk about Cena as this big crossover celebrity, and I'm a fan of a lot that Cena's done, and I defend him as a guy who changed the image of WWE at a time that they really needed it 20 years ago. I'm not just default negative on Cena, but in this case, this should be Cody's show, his main event to have, and WrestlePalooza should be defined on his title defense. And at least in the final segment tonight on the Go Home Show, they did that. Jake, any thoughts on what I just had to say there?
Yeah, I am curious if there's, any resentment on the part of John Cena, who put in the bulk of his career during what I think a lot of people would consider a fairly down period for the company. And, and also, I guess, put in the work when the company was struggling, and probably spent the most bulk of his career getting very mixed crowd reactions from the people who had stuck around and weren't happy, with the product that he was delivering. And to have the top stars of today, and I don't know if that resentment exists or not, but to see them succeeding and doing so in a way that was very difficult for him or impossible for him at the time, it may be, a situation where he carries around a bit of baggage from that. I don't know. It's hard to, I
brought that up in my column too. I think that it's guesswork, but does Cena resent Cody for being more popular than him? And frankly, even though no one at ESPN knows this or thinks it, and in WWE, corporate, I don't know if they think it, Cody's a more successful champion than John Cena in some key metrics, including crowd reaction and frankly being the headliner for stadium shows that Cena was not part of headlining as often, and the types of crowds and the gates they're drawing for Raw and SmackDown when Cody's on them. It's an ensemble. There's a lot of credit. Roman Reigns, obviously, Sami Zayn, the Usos. I'm not taking anything away from Rhea Ripley, all of them. It's not a one-man show, but it wasn't with Cena either. But the top guy gets most of the credit and most of the blame, and Cody deserves more of the credit. I want to follow up on this, including some chat comments, because I got some things to say about how people are kind of framing what I just said about Cody versus Cena and that dynamic and what I wrote about, just for kind of clarification in terms of what I'll get into it after this, but let's pause and introduce ourselves first. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Friday, September 19th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter. Here's the latest copy of that. WrestleMania 3 headed to Saudi Arabia is this week's headline. So you can read the PDF version of this with a VIP membership, but we still do our paper copy too, even in this era. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Exclusive content every week, exclusive columns, my cover stories, my editorials, Greg Park's weekly columns, Sean Radican with some great work, Ellen Forel, Ellen Cunahan. I'm leaving it, but there's good exclusive stuff in there, and it is worth it's worth checking out every week as part of your VIP membership. Again, you can read an all text or PDF version of it with a VIP membership. PWTorch.com/GoVIP for people watching us on YouTube. That graphic is on the screen. I also oversee and write for PWTorch.com. I had the story up on ESPN and their media call yesterday, and I pulled from that, I thought, the top story, which is ESPN clarifying who can and can't get WrestlePalooza through their existing ESPN subscription and cable. And I broke that down. I did my best to try to portray clearly what they portrayed as best they could also during that media call and lay that out. So that's all up there. I encourage everybody to check out pwtorch.com every day. If you appreciate my commentary here, I think you'll like not only my writing, my news writing and editorials, but also the team that I've put together who do a lot of great writing on a daily basis that you won't find anywhere else. Thoughtful, smart, objective commentary on a lot of wrestling companies and all the big stories and some smaller stuff too. A lot of niche columns that are really fun. Proud of the team, proud of our content. Check it out. And I also host podcasts, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post shows after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and also the Wade Keller podcast flagship, which is not on YouTube. It's a blue logo show on our podcast feed. Search Wade Keller, subscribe to the red and blue logos. This week, Kelly Wells joined me on the flagship, and we talked a lot of NXT, by the way. The Homecoming show was taking place as Kelly and I recorded. Kelly's beat has been NXT and New Japan, and so we talked a lot of NXT and current and history, and also talked about G1 and AEW's New Japan stars, and looked ahead to this weekend. Highly recommend you check it out. Search Wade Keller. Subscribe for free to the Blue Logo Show. That's podcast only. While you're at it, subscribe to the Red Logo Show, to get the podcast versions of it. That might be more convenient for you if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast side of things, which is most of you, you're invited to join us live on YouTube after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. You can find a link in my TV reports at pwtorch.com, or just search Wade Keller or PWTorch, and you can find the shows. Please subscribe to the channel, set up alerts so you know when we go live, and because we'll also have live post shows after All Out and WrestlePalooza tomorrow, assuming All Out doesn't go so long that it ends at the same time as WrestlePalooza. Then we'll have to make a call on which of the two shows goes live. I'm hoping we do not have a traffic jam and Tony Khan doesn't turn into an 8-hour show. But you know, it's a non-zero chance, Jake, that they're that All Out.
I think 5 hours is within the realm of possibility. Yeah, if you're trying to watch both shows, you may have to watch from beginning on ESPN for the WrestlePalooza show.
Oh, for sure.
You're gonna miss the first 45 minutes or so of that one.
Because there's a 4-hour window between the shows. So I think Tony Khan's for sure going more than 4 hours. I don't think he wants to gift the ESPN audience the John Cena Lesnar match. I think it's promising Cena Lesnar at the beginning is a way to get people to watch right away too, because they know that's an attraction, and I'm sure that's part of the strategy. So nevertheless, right here on the PWTorch YouTube channel, we'll have our Wrestling Night in America post shows on 2 shows. I'm joking, but if All Out goes like 9 hours, then I will only be able to go live on one of those shows, or we'll do a combined show with 4 hosts instead of 2, talking about both shows. It'll be crazy. It's a wild day tomorrow. So anyway, ton of plugs. Oh, PWTorch, search PWTorch in your podcast app to subscribe to the PWTorch Daily Cast, because that's the podcast feed that has our post-PLE and post-pay-per-view shows on it. And that has a new show every day of the week with different hosts and different themes. So that's the 3rd podcast feed you should for sure be subscribing to if you want to get all of our weekly new content. Jake Barnett is my co-host here, talking SmackDown. Jake Barnett from ProWrestling.net. I know you and Jason Powell and the team will have a lot of coverage tomorrow. Also, in the written format, I always have ProWrestling.net open on my computer, always refreshing and checking out what you and Jason are saying about the shows and what the whole team is doing there. And I'll be doing the same thing tomorrow. See if there's anything I missed, and keep an eye on those opinions. Jake, fill people in a little bit on if you're going to be part of that tomorrow, and just ProWrestling.net and your contributions in general.
Yeah, so for ProWrestling.net, I typically am doing the live coverage of AEW Dynamite on Wednesdays. You can follow along with my coverage of the show. I also do member-exclusive audio reviews for that show after it airs. I joined Jason Powell for the .NET Weekly audio show that comes out on Fridays. That's our weekly flagship, going over the news of the week. This weekend, I'll be actually doing the live report for WrestlePalooza, so I'll probably miss the main event of All Out, most likely, and have to go back and watch it before we record the the audio review. We're doing a similar back-to-back audio reviews like you guys will be doing over on the Torch. But if you're interested in becoming a member and getting access to all that audio, you can get that at all the information at pwmembership.net.
Awesome, Jake. Thanks. Yep. Let's get back to our conversation about SmackDown and the chat. Although Kyle Fassel did note it's the only printed newsletter. Well, not in all the world, but it is the last surviving paper copy pro wrestling newsletter. When I I'll keep this brief, but when I was 15 years old and started getting Pro Wrestling newsletters, ordering them out of the back of magazines where they had pen clip sections, that was so enlightening. It was so awesome. There was just a quicker turnaround time on news. I at one point was probably subscribing to 15 different newsletters. It was just a glory period of pre-internet wrestling journalism and commentary. A real fun community. And one of these days I'll do a show or a series of shows on the history of pro wrestling journalism pre-internet in the burgeoning newsletter era. I remember the first newsletter I got in the mail was Wrestling Forum and the Wrestling Observer and Global Wrestling News Service with Tom Burke, Matt Results. Can't think of the name of who ran that. On and on and on. It was so I just wanted so much information on wrestling, and that was a whole layer peeled away of so much inside information and timely information. So, but yeah, I feel sort of proud and a little worried. Should I still be doing this? No one else is. Actual paper copy with labels and stamps sent through the postal system. But my mom's still running the subscription side of things and does work on mail day. So it's still a family business in that respect. And it's fun that we've been able to keep it going. All right. Thanks, Kyle, for noting that we're the last paper copy standing. All right. So I mentioned that there were some comments in the chat about our opening topic. And I want to, of course, it's been a lot. Okay. Derek Mitchell said, yes, Cody is a champ, but like boxing, he's not the A side. The draw is Cena and Lesnar. Sorry, Cody is the B side. And we can debate that. I think that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. First of all, Derek, I think you can, if you're WWE, you can treat Cody like he's as big or bigger of a deal than Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Treat them as special attractions. You still get everything out of Cena and Lesnar. Nobody's not going to watch because you're treating Cody as a bigger deal. But, you know, when Stone Cold Steve Austin broke out, people weren't talking about, remember the good old days with Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan? I mean, at some point, you frame your guy who's getting big pops and drawing big ticket sales. You frame him as the biggest star, and people, you know, it's propaganda. But if there's some truth in it, you can solidify, if not amplify, people's feelings if they're kind of on the fence about whether Cody's a top star. But number two is, even if we set that argument aside, I don't care if Cody and Drew is the number one draw tomorrow night. What I care about is that WWE protects himself when Cena and Lesnar aren't around. They protect their championship. They give Cody what he deserves, and Drew what he deserves, which is treating them at the current full-time stars who are showing up almost every week. Cody took a little time off after SummerSlam, but you know, then that's going to happen sometimes. But he's mostly a year-round guy and a very hard worker. Your job is to promote and frame people as big stars and get the most out of them. Cena and Lesnar are established. Cody is 40 years old. He's a big draw. He's in the, you know, a phase of his career where he's having the most success. Don't worry about how your impression of how many people are actually tuning in for Cena Lesnar compared to Cody Drew. Your job, if you're WWE, is let's protect this championship and let's get the most we can out of Cody. Let's treat him, regardless of how we feel factually, as the biggest deal. And they haven't been doing that. You know, and that's unfortunate. Mark Biscotti says, put Drew over. Cody's at a low. I rarely say this, but Drew deserves it. We can get into the finish. But Cody's not at a low. He beat John Cena. He's not. It's not inevitable, Jake, that he's at a low. He just hasn't been around, and he hasn't been treated well this year because, well, the last couple years, because Rock got in the way and meddled, and then Cena got in the way and got the spotlight. This should be Cody's era, and they're doing damage to him. It's not too late. I think Cody was great tonight, and he's just start making it about Cody again, and I think fans will be back on board. Jake.
Yeah, my take on this might be different than most. I think the promotion of Cena and Lesnar as, if you want to call them the A-side draw, I think that's probably a good way to frame it. I think it has a lot to do with WWE's shift towards the sources of their revenue are B2B. They're business to business.
Yep.
So their money comes from Netflix. Their money comes from their domestic, Disney now with the pay-per-view revenue and all of their domestic television partners. And so there's a lot of people who are spending a lot of money on WWE programming that probably have a lot more input than you would think. And so you're seeing, them being catered to in a way that probably wouldn't be the case if the revenue was
a fan revenue driven business.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we're seeing here. I don't think the company has lost faith in Cody. I don't think they see Cena and Lesnar as some sort of future. I think they are trying to placate the people that drive their quarterly revenue numbers. And I mean, it's kind of a bummer for fans that they probably now place second in the list of priorities for the company for people to please. But I think that's generally a reflection of that. And I may be off base a little bit in the totality of it, but I think that plays a huge role in the discussion.
I think you're right. I remember when TNA was letting Spike TV tell them, oh, you should sign Sting and push him, or you should sign this ex-WWE guy and push him. And TNA fans were going, you know what? Okay, that's fine, but don't do it at the expense of the people who are the current day star in their prime. You have a chance to define whether somebody's a big star or not within reason. Cody is well within reason as a guy that you can frame as the central star of this era. And politics and not even maliciousness or animosity towards Cody, but politics with The Rock, and then John Cena coming in and everything being about him, it has taken away a lot of the shine from Cody. I think you can do both. I mean, I think you can give people John Cena, Lesnar, special attraction match, last time these two will probably ever wrestle, and let the casual ESPN fans and executives and on-air talent, let them talk about that, but have as an edict that they also say our main event is our world championship match, or our WWE undisputed title match. Cody Rhodes is the top star of this era, and have them say that, because what happens then is casual fans tune in, and they tune in to see Cena and Lesnar. But if you just say, well, that's the biggest deal today, and that's the last time you're going to see them, then they go away. But if you say, tune in to see Cena and Lesnar, but the narrative is Cody is this breakout megastar, and the crowd's going nuts, you frame him that way, you feature him that way, the crowd cheers, goes nuts for him. I don't think the boos are something that is going to overwhelm him right now, and I think Drew's helpful in that regard. And you talk about Drew and really build him up as, he beat the beast, and he's, also in his prime and a top star. Then you have it, and they should have done this more on the Netflix debut in January. Those casual fans who are doing crazy metrics on social media, this ephemeral, largely meaningless thing that just fades instantly and doesn't lead to revenue, but makes people go, oh, Lesnar is back and Cena is back. Okay, cool. That was fun for 20 seconds of my life. Now they scroll down and do what's next. WWE and people get preoccupied with that sugar rush that is largely meaningless, other than sort of a general brand awareness that it gives you. That isn't a net negative, but it's not essential. But what you want is you want people to tune in who weren't watching, don't really know that Cody is this red hot star. You want to tune in because of Cena Lesnar, but you want them to see a show that presents Cody as a bigger deal than them today because he's in his prime and this is his era. It might work, it might not, but you don't give up on it. You don't wave the white flag. You don't present Cody as a B draw just because in this instance he may or may not be. I'm not willing to fully concede that. We have hardcore fans reading our website, Jake, but in our poll, the runaway match that people are tuning in for tomorrow that they're most excited about is the mixed tag with Punk and AJ. But last I checked, Cody and Drew was tied or ahead of Lesnar Cena as a match that people are most looking forward to. I just don't think WWE should concede because Cena's in this Hollywood star and was at the Oscars naked and Peacemaker and all that, and Lesnar's former UFC champ and a badass and paid more than almost anybody. I mean, you don't have to concede that Cody, your current guy's not your top star. So again, full circle back to tonight. I'm glad they put him in the main segment. They paid some lip service to him. Kyle Fassel said that the final segment felt paint by numbers, where the Brock thing felt exciting and fresh. That is a fact that might it's a subjective fact in the sense that, I think there's merit to it, but that does not restrict you from not treating Cody as the biggest deal right now. And I think that's where they then can draw week after week for Raw and SmackDown. You want the full-time people to seem like stars worth paying for, and WWE should not take for granted that people buying tickets, you need them to pay these prices because you want them to think they're paying $200, $300 because Cody is the biggest star. Rhea Ripley's your biggest star. Continue to push that narrative if you want to keep this momentum going. Or otherwise, people are going to drop in once a year or twice a year for big shows and drop out. And I just don't that's a poor use of resources. Lesnar and Cena should be the gateway drug to to Cody Rhodes, and treat him that way. Jake.
Yeah, I think Cody and Drew were handicapped by Cody being off for such a long stretch there too. Like they essentially only had the very final moments of last week's SmackDown and then this contract signing segment as a way to push this match. And so maybe the level of effort was put into Cena and Lesnar in some ways because they were available to make appearances. But I do think the general premise of your argument is correct, that Cody and Drew should be your headline athletes, and you should be using the other players, especially the household names like Cena and Lesnar it's not really a bait and switch, but it's bringing people in the door so that you can show them the product that's going to be there in October and November and January and into next year. So
week after week after week.
I think that's ultimately what they should be doing with it, but I think there's the creative forces in WWE are serving a lot of masters at this point. Obviously you're correct that they should be looking to hold on to and expand their current fan base by giving them what they want, and that's entertaining week-to-week television. But you've got a lot of the company is primarily focused on dollars. I mean, listen to the way that Mark Shapiro talks during those quarterly conference calls, and it's basically like, we're turning on the vacuum even harder to see if we can get the last penny out of your pocket when you attend our shows. And so I think when they have people who are paying them the money in their ear saying, hey, we want household names on these shows, that I think that stuff's coming from the top as much as anything else too.
And I think the people run WWE should be able to trick ESPN into thinking they're getting exactly what they want, and while simultaneously tricking the fans. I mean, I shouldn't use the word trick for either of them, but conveying to the fans on the actual show that Cody Rhodes is a guy you should tune in for every week. Come for the special attraction, stay for the weekly main event. Who's our top star? By the way, I don't think what they're doing is crazy. Like, I can think there's a better route and also not have it be that I hate the route they're taking. I think promoting Cena and Lesnar hard is smart. I just think it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game where that means you can't also treat Cody and Drew as nearly equal. So give the ESPN executives and the on-air talent what they want. The casual fan who knows who they are, promote the hell out of that match. But as an edict, our main event is our world championship match, and we want you to talk about that too. So call it a co-main event. Like they dictate language to everybody. Paul Levesque should be dictating language to ESPN, or framing it as a strategic suggestion, however you want, whatever euphemism he wants, and go, please refer to Cody and Lesnar as a co-main event along with our world title match with Cody Rhodes and Drew. Make sure that the graphics, like every wrestling website has ads for WrestlePalooza, and it's exclusively Cena and Lesnar. You open, and I wrote this in my column, people can read it. You open the Roku app, the ad telling you about WrestlePalooza on the ESPN app, it's Lesnar and Cena. You go to ESPN's website, there's a montage of Lesnar and Cena, nothing else. That's what triggered my column. It's like, wait a second, and then I gave background on it, which is John Cena for a week or two in the lead up to WrestleMania didn't mention Cody's name in his promos about his match with Cody. Like, I texted people in WWE tongue-in-cheek going, does Cena even know who he's wrestling? This is a pattern. After Cena beat Cody, after Cody carried him to the best match he's had this year, and one of his best matches ever, Cena wasn't gracious enough to say anything about Cody other than at the end of the segment, treat him like this kid backup quarterback who's going to whisper wisdom to, maybe someday you'll be a star kid, instead of acknowledging that Cody is as successful as he ever was. And as, so it's a totality of all of that. And when Cody won the title, they shouldn't have delayed the parade because he had other stuff going on in his acting and personal life. There should have been a segment taped. There should have been video packages on him. They should have had him on the phone or hook him up in a video call and really keep him present, even if he's not involved in the angle. have the Stanley Cup parade for his massive title win at SummerSlam, and keep him in the narrative. And they have a policy: if we're not making money on him right now and he can't be at the show, we're not going to pay attention to him. And I disagree with that. I think it hurt Cody tonight, and a little bit last night was a way, or last week was a way to kind of rebuild that. So again, I just think you can have both. Everything you're saying, Jake, is so true. Their money's coming from corporate, and they've got to please them with big stars. I'm not against Cena and Lesnar being on the show. Just promote the hell out of Cody and Drew. Also, don't make the same mistake they did with Netflix, because they've been paying a price ever since. Those numbers on Netflix are not awful, but they're not good. The first Netflix number was good, and they should have dedicated half their time to making sure people knew Gunther and Rhea Ripley and Cody Rhodes were bigger stars, and the other special attraction should have been sidebars. But instead, you have Rock patronizing Cody with a pat on the head, and undercutting a storyline that, it's just they're placating to the big stars too much, and they're falling for their own little celebrity, they're marks for the celebrity legacy stars, and they're not keeping their eye on what's best for business in the long run. Okay, so let's talk about the contract signing, Jake. Cody and Drew come out. Cody goes back and forth with Drew. We'll talk about some of the specifics, but then Drew headbutts Cody. He has a chance to kick him into the announce desk, but he wisely goes, no, I got to protect my match. I want to win this title. And so he stops doing that. Cody dives on him as he's leaving the ring, and Nick Aldis approaches Drew. So Cody dives on him, and then Drew gives him a Claymore after a pull apart. What did you think of the visual, but also what was said by Cody and Drew to build this up?
I thought Cody's framing of it was a little odd. He de-emphasized storytelling at one point, talking about how sometimes people just want to show up and see a fight, and they don't really care about all this pageantry we got going on around it. And I thought that was just a strange line from him specifically, who's been so anal retentive about curating his character and his story over the last couple of years. To de-emphasize that to that degree seemed a little bit strange. But overall, the way the segment proceeded, and the final visual, and Drew smartly not putting him back on the shelf so he could still have his match. I like the general psychology of it, but I thought Cody stumbled out of the blocks a little bit. Like it just ended up being a somewhat average segment to me. It was pretty paint by numbers, and I didn't think the promo content was particularly exciting.
I think Cody carried himself in that segment like an alpha champion with the most important title, and had a passion and a fire that I think people really like. That they like him best when he's pretty just straightforward, indicating that his title reign is super important. Like, one of the things about Cody that I think bonded him with fans is that he came across to fans as big of a fan as them, and valuing the championship as much as them. And I think he's at his best when he seems like a fan who is living his dream. And when Cody said, Drew, your legacy is going to be losing to me at the first WrestlePalooza and coming up short for the championship, it's about the championship. When Cody says, you're good at talking on social media, but put your final post out there, and then I'm gonna write your legacy for you after that. I thought that was solid content. Also talking about the tag team titles, and saying, well, nobody cared when we won them 15 years ago. I think he's like, well, we have to incorporate this coincidence of you and I 15 years ago today winning the tag titles. I think, the material saying that no one cared about us because it's about the fans and they just want to see people fight. I didn't think that the start was strong in terms of verbally, but I think if you just didn't understand English or turned off the volume, you'd go, this is a fired up champion talking to a challenger. This looks like a big deal, and he's taking this seriously. So there was some good and bad in it. But my biggest thing, and this gets back to even some chat comments, is this isn't about whether Cody is at his peak right now in WWE, or that this match is anywhere close to, although I think it is among fans, close to the anticipation for Cena and Lesnar. It's certainly not close to the mixed tag. It's just about fake it till you make it. Treat Cody like a big deal so that you don't define him down, so that when that right opponent comes or the stars are gone, you're left looking like you have a B product. You treat Cody like the biggest deal. And I think putting them in the final segment, calling it the main event, and the optics and the intensity with these two did enough to have a casual viewer who tuned in because of Lesnar go, you know what, these two seem like a big deal to me. They look like stars, and the crowd's reacting to them. So I think ultimately it was successful in that way, even though I don't think the opening, stuff about 15 years ago was the best material from Cody.
Yeah, no, I think it ended up being a solid segment. It's I do wish that they had spent a bit more time focusing on what exactly Drew feels is at stake. It seems like Cody is trying to assert that Drew is obsessed with his legacy and coming at it from an angle of he wants revenge for all the times that he was short shrifted, from title shots or whatever the case may be. But we never really hear Drew articulate that. He's always allowing his opponents to sort of define what it is that he's doing and chasing. And so I think that's been a missing aspect of it for Drew from a psychology standpoint. But I do think Cody is very fiery, and he knows how to speak to the crowd, even if I do think he gets a little patronizing at times when he starts, talking about how it's all about the fans. He's clearly a very self-obsessed person who's very motivated. But I do think in general, a couple of months ago I was thinking, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull up from this somewhat of a dip that Cody felt like he was in, where it was like, maybe they need to think about, turning him heel in the next couple of months. But I think it's, the Cena match well surpassed my expectations. And if it wasn't for, him having to take some time off for personal reasons, I think he'd be in a much better place, heading into this pay-per-view than he would be otherwise.
It's wild that Cody beat Cena, and has he had a chance to overtly celebrate that victory in front of fans on SmackDown?
Not that I recall. I think he was injured basically the first night back, right, from the Drew attack. And so then he missed, was it 3 weeks of television, and then he was back. So no outright celebration of the title win. And I'm surprised they didn't make more, in the closing segment about the fact that, Drew's beaten Brock Lesnar. Cody brought it up, but essentially you have two guys in the opening match that, these guys have beaten. And if you want to frame them as bigger stars, you could certainly make a bigger deal out of that too.
Totally agree. I mean, I think having Drew with a win over Lesnar is a chance. So much of what we see with Cody and Lesnar does feel, and I don't know how much it comes across the audience, but I think there's in a conscious way, but I think a subconscious way, Cody has spent 2 years tiptoeing around the politics with The Rock, not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to. Hey, there's a Paul Heyman Roman Reigns camp, and he's got to worry about saying the wrong thing about who created this wave of success in media interviews, on TV, behind the scenes. And then you have Lesnar coming back, and then you have the Cena retirement tour. And if you're Cody, it's like he wants to play politics. He doesn't want to. He's getting good money. He's a world champ. But I think part of why people are saying that Cody feels like Mark Biscotti in the chat, Cody feels like a second-tier champ right now, which says a lot since earlier Cena matches as a heel felt like cartoons. I think people are picking up on Cody, just him not being the alpha that they thought he would be, and frankly wanted him to be or expected him to be, because he is having to tiptoe around a lot of egos and stars. And I blame John Cena's lack of graciousness, whether it's malicious or negligent. I wish Paul Levesque had a little bit more authority, a little bit more of a spine, but I think he's got to worry about politics because Dwayne Johnson and Brian Gewirtz in that camp have a lot of sway with top executives at TKO. I mean, everybody's got to tiptoe on everybody. And so I just think Cody's trying not to create waves. But I don't think that leads to the best version of Cody. And that's part of why I'm advocating on these shows and in my editorial, why I'm advocating for it. I just kind of want to, I'm encouraging WWE to be jostled out of this default mode of we serve the egos and we bend at the knee of these top legacy stars, and keep their eye on this amazing gift they have. For lack of a better term, I shouldn't say for lack of a better term that's coming to mind, of Cody Rhodes. Like, he is a popular babyface, mature, reliable, passionate. The fans largely love him, and when they don't, it's sometimes it's a misstep by him, although there's been fewer of those than in AEW. Well, sometimes it's just the company not putting him in the right spot. I just don't think they should hedge with him being a heel at all at this point. But Mark Piscetti says, put Drew over. Cody's at a low. I rarely say this, but Drew deserves it. The premise there is Cody is at a low. And if you stipulate to that, then the premise is he's at a low and you should pull the plug, as opposed to he's at a low and WWE should take inventory and fix it. They should start figuring out why are people saying he's at a low, even if they disagree with that premise. What can we do to get him out of it? Because he's still the same Cody who he has the same promo ability, same physical ability, same appearance, and same recognition with fans. So I just say start focusing on lining up good opponents for him. But I don't know that the creative wheels behind the scenes are in the Cody Rhodes business as much as they should be, as Vince McMahon was in the Steve Austin Rock business when they were the centerpiece, or the Bret Hart business for that matter, when Bret was Vince's guy, going back to Hogan, and when Vince tried with Ultimate Warrior. Like, you can tell when a company gets behind someone, Jake. You can also tell when they're kind of like, it's ensemble and we got our other egos to placate and shiny new toys to deal with. And I just think value what you have with Cody, because it these mega over babyface who's reliable and mature like him, not unflawed, but they don't come along very often. Ride it and feed him better opponents on a regular basis. Jake,
I guess is he at a low, or are people just trying to convince themselves that he's at a low?
Right.
Because
I mean, that's why I was stipulated for the sake of discussion, but I'm not actually conceding that point, Jake. Yeah, good point.
I guess I listen to the people in the arenas, and they're still going nuts for him. And he's still selling merch, and they're still selling tickets. Like, I understand, when you're watching the show and you start to lose interest in a character and you got bad vibes or whatever. I don't like the leap from, I personally am not as enthusiastic as I once was about Cody, and he's at a career low and they got to pull the plug. Like, I think those are two different things.
Yep.
And I think people fall into the trap of assuming that their opinions are shared by a wider audience than what is reflected by me watching the television show and saying people are still going nuts about this dude. So I don't concede that point either, but I do agree that the company as a whole, should be focusing more on the talents that are there on a weekly basis, and less on the ones who, could, have either retired or are close to retirement and are doing very part-time dates. I guess, maybe you're afraid of the PR if you make them unhappy and they run to a podcast and bury you or something. But I don't think that, I wouldn't take that threat too seriously either. So I think they just need to, get more comfortable with cracking a few fragile egos every once in a while when it means that they can focus on the long-term success, which is in 5 years, none of these people are going to be around. And then you're left holding the pieces of things that you didn't put together properly.
Yeah. And they'll push Cody when he's working 4 dates a year as hard as they should be pushing him now. Like, don't wait. Yeah. Sadler version 3 goes, online fans have been trying to convince themselves Cody's in a lull since he's come to WWE. And CJ LaChapelle says, I don't think Cody is at a low. Derek Mitchell says, yes, Cody is tiptoeing, not wanting to upset the apple cart. Now, let's talk about whether Cody and Brock is next. Kyle Fassel says that, and he says it feels exciting. Kyle Fassel says Heyman on the mic with Lesnar versus Cody. That's something. So let's talk about another big thing on this show, which was after Brock Lesnar walked backstage, he ran into Paul Heyman, who got a haircut, looks refreshed, whatever he's been up to. Maybe a storyline hospital stay did him some good. He looked refreshed and healthy, healthier. And Lesnar goes, we got to talk. And Heyman looked at Lesnar like an old friend was showing, bumped into an old friend at the airport or something. And then you have Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, but Braun Breaker not by accident in the foreground of the shot. And you're like, what does he think about this? Because obviously Breaker is Heyman's shiny new toy. Is Breaker jealous? Does he not want to play second to Lesnar in the Heyman, hierarchy of who Heyman is giving attention to? Obviously, one of the reasons Lesnar is back, Jake, and that they signed him to more matches in an extension is they think Lesnar is a key to getting Braun Breaker over as a megastar at some point, whether that's next year's WrestleMania or in Saudi Arabia or at SummerSlam in Minneapolis, whatever it is, or anywhere in between. This was the first moment, and Lesnar did not go, let me introduce myself to you, or you've got these two guys have been impressing me. Lesnar was in his own world, looked at Heyman, said, let's talk, and blew them off and walked away. not in a way where you'd go, it was inexcusable. His mind was elsewhere. But the absence of camaraderie and chit chat is, I'm just, duly noted as something to keep, think of a seed maybe being planted. Your thoughts on that and what it portends?
Well, I do think, the eventual Breaker versus Lesnar and Breaker, versus Roman Reigns matches are going to be key to cementing him as a top guy. And I don't know how quickly they'll get to that. I'm presuming one of them will likely happen at WrestleMania, and maybe the other happens at SummerSlam, like you said, in Minneapolis. But I think it is, they're setting up Breaker as the next buzzsaw, the Lesnar type guy that people fear, and I think that's going to be a really positive thing for his career if they stick the landing. But the question is, can the egos get out of the way, right? Like, are you going to have a Roman Reigns and a Brock Lesnar that are willing to put over Braun Breaker clean and do it in a way that elevates him? And I mean, I'd be a little worried about it, if I were Braun Breaker, if the politics are gonna show, if the knives are gonna come out and you're gonna find yourself in a bunch of crappy finishes that muddle your push and all those types of things. But I think at least the thought appears to be in motion, where they're setting up some kind of collision at some point between Breaker and Lesnar, and they've already started that process with Roman Reigns once he's back from filming the Street Fighter movie. And so I think the path is pretty straightforward here. Is Lesnar going to try and get Heyman's representation if he goes after a title shot? Maybe, but I think that the complexity of having Heyman try to balance keeping Seth Rollins and the Vision happy while also entertaining Brock Lesnar as a client is kind of an interesting set of stories. Heyman's one of their best promo guys, and if anybody can make that interesting, I think he would be capable of it.
Who's better than Heyman on the mic? Like, when you say one of, like, who's in contention or in that top tier with him? Or because I think you could argue Heyman at his best is just a level better than the other best.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think there's people that approach Paul Heyman at times. I think they do have promos that are generally excellent. I would put CM Punk in that category. And I think, in another couple years, you might be able to put Becky Lynch on that same level. Like, I think she's improving, and I think she's done exceptional work since she's been able to open up the spigot a little bit, getting in the ring with people that are more over, and she doesn't have to use kid gloves around quite as much. I think Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins are, could be in that category too, although I don't think they're quite there yet. So there's people that are in that upper echelon of skill level, but Heyman's been doing this a long time, and he's been good at it for a long time. And so there's always levels to the game, and I don't know if anybody is quite at his peak level when he's on his best.
Ryan Solorio in the chat said current or any year, and I mean current. Who's better than Heyman right now on the roster? I'll take Heyman over CM Punk in terms of their best work. I just will. I just think Heyman is, and that's not a dig at Punk. It's just, and I think Punk would be like, hey, that's no insult. There's nothing. That's like, oh, you're the second best player besides Wayne Gretzky. Like, you shouldn't be upset about that. Or I'll take Michael Jordan over LeBron. Okay, that's fine. Jordan was amazing. But yeah, those discussions can be had. Brock Benningfield goes, I love the Rat Heyman ready to jump ship when it's opportunistic. And I think Heyman, like, that's going to be what's interesting is if Bronson and Braun are a tag team and they win the tag titles, it does create an excuse for Heyman to focus on Lesnar perhaps going after Cena. And they haven't fought for 2 years. I mean, it's not that they haven't, but, SummerSlam Night of Champions 2 years ago that they were fighting in singles matches. So I think that's long enough to do a one-off or something, especially if it's en route to something else for one or both of them. But yeah, if Reed and Breaker win the tag titles, at least it doesn't seem like Heyman is choosing Lesnar over Breaker's in the tag division, and that might be very deliberate. A good fellow 1422 goes, put the straps on the bronze, no doubt. And then Kyle Fassel says, how about Brock wins a title and Seth has the other title and the Bronze have the tag belts? Faction domination, and you can build out from there. Yeah, anything you want to add to that, Jake?
No, I agree. The Bronze need the tag titles. I think they're the right call for that right now. You know,
Mhm.
the tag division on Raw has been an afterthought, and so it seems like having a hot team holding those championships would be a boost to that division, even if it takes a while to get competition up to that level where you feel like you can move in another direction. But I think Heyman is the guy in terms of mic work. Like I can't think of anybody who stands above him. But I've been impressed, with how much the level of mic work in general in WWE has improved over the last couple of years. I think it's certainly not many people are ever going to approach what Paul Heyman is capable of, but I do think in general the storytelling and the acting in WWE is the best it's been since I've been watching top to bottom on the show.
Yeah.
It's not it's not that everybody is on that Heyman level, but I think the floor has risen to the point where you have to be really good to stand out, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Good points. I agree. Nodding along. Goodfellow 1422 says, put Brock in the Vision. Let's cook without Seth and see what happens with Seth's return. It's been interesting seeing them, Seth and Becky doing their own thing. And even tonight, just Heyman and Braun and the Bronze doing their thing with Lesnar. BJF says, I'm more high on Bronson Reed than Breaker. I think Reed has it. And Sailor Vision 3 goes, Bronson Reed went from being the typical heater or bodyguard that takes pinfalls to top guys to a potential breakout star and a top guy himself, in my opinion. I hope WWE higher-ups feel the same way. How are you feeling about that? Is that you don't want Reed to get hot in a way where his ceiling is lower than where Braun Breakers ultimately could be. But that doesn't mean that Reed doesn't feel like he's exceeding where they thought he would be in the role that he's in. I mean, that's a common, I think, observation at this point, that Reed maybe is more than WWE was expecting him to be, and they ought to adjust and accommodate for that, while also keeping Breaker on track for what they hope is him being a centerpiece star in 2 or 3 years for them.
Yeah, I mean, what a problem to have, right? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we have this embarrassment of riches
Yeah.
here. Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do about it? So
Totally.
I think Bronson Reed has always had a little bit of a spark to him. I don't know that he really showed a lot of personality in the roles that he was given up until this point. I think being allowed to flex a little bit and show some confidence and have a backstop like Paul Heyman, somebody who's doing the bulk of the talking for them, has freed up Breaker and Reed to grow in different directions. Like I got a big kick out of the Shula Fala stuff. That was good, ridiculous fun. And I think Reed showed off what you can do with a lot of unearned confidence, right? It's just it was a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, I'm high on Reed. I don't think his ceiling is higher than Breaker, at least from where we're looking now. But what a difference can a year make? I mean, who knows what we'll know at that point in time? It's going to depend on who delivers the better performances.
Yeah. Bronson Reed will need to prove himself more in the future, says Kyle Still in the chat. Vision or Ryan Solorio goes, Bronson Reed is reminding me of Batista when he broke out of Evolution. Interesting comparison there. I think there's something to be said. Derek Mitchell, as far as best promo goes, Heyman's the best, but I think Drew McIntyre is underrated on the mic. His authenticity is believable. CM Punk's promo skills haven't been as strong as in the past. Yeah, Drew, I mean, I think you could make a case for Drew being number 2 behind Heyman in totality the last year, 2 or 3 years. And I'm not saying it's a runaway, because there's been peak moments for Cody, peak moments for CM Punk. Yeah, I mean, others are good in their role. It's just, it's sort of like star ratings. Like, star ratings aren't at the be-all end-all. Like, having a high star rating match based on the traditional evaluation doesn't mean it's necessarily the best thing for the company to draw the most money. It's about storytelling and having characters over and having stakes that seem high and having the crowd follow the drama in a way that feels plugged into a story being told and not just reacting to moves. Same thing for promos. You can be really good at promos, but it doesn't mean that your promos are the most valuable to the advancement of ticket sales, characters getting over, and getting people invested in the product. But I think Heyman and Drew and Cody do that at a really, really high level in both categories. And so, sometimes there's people who just want to, I mean, like MJF in AEW, sometimes he checks those boxes, and other times it looks like he just wants to make news and be talked about that night, and shock people. And I can't believe he went there and get, but what you want is, it's not all about you and getting attention. It's about being part of elevating and moving forward a key story, and being true to the characters and not overdoing it. And I just think Heyman, and it's, Heyman, Drew, and Punk are very good in all those categories. So however you want to rank them, and Cody too. That's a top 3 or 4 that is setting a good example for everybody else. But obviously there's niche promos. Roman Reigns is different in the way promos. And Becky is really entertaining. I think she could enter the conversation. But she's entertaining in a different way. So yeah, it's a fun conversation to have. I mean, obviously we've been having them forever as wrestling fans. Okay, let's okay, I'll throw Derek in. He's throwing an old school reference in. It's a weird comparison, but Drew's promo skills remind me of Arn Anderson. Believable, coherent, and true to his character. Some more debate in the chat about our discussion with Reed.
I think Drew might have a little bit more charisma than Arn Anderson, but
Arn had a different,
in terms of the authenticity, I think that's bang on. But just in terms of personality, Arn was very one note, and I think Drew has a lot more facets to his game than what Arn brought to the table.
Yeah, there has been some, I don't know if criticism is a word, but cooling on Braun Breaker. Is he showing enough depth, enough dimension? Now that Heyman was gone, and it was, Bronson and Braun were kind of carrying the talking segments without Seth, Becky, or Heyman around. How are you feeling about Braun Breaker's trajectory? Has the angle flattened a little bit? Is it pointing as high as it ever has? What do you think?
I guess I've seen the criticism, but I've never quite been on board with it. I think he's still too fresh to be grading on, like, well, he's not elite, he's not, CM Punk or Cody Rhodes or Drew McIntyre or whoever you want to throw. Like, I think he's going to grow into the role, and I think you have to think in longer time scales. Like, he's not going to be, taking the mantle from CM Punk or Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania next year. This is a multi-year project. And so I think he's well on a trajectory of being a top guy in the next, 2 years. I don't think that's really in question.
But he's not a finished product.
Well, no, but I don't think he has to be.
No,
he's not being asked to be a finished product at this point. He's got,
and that's, I think, what people are overreacting to. Like, the fun is seeing him grow into what you just said. Oh, it might take 2 years. Let him grow into it. Don't say, well, you're not there yet. So, and I don't want to frame everyone's analysis as premature. Some people might just go, I've seen enough. He's not going to be the guy. I mean, you can have that opinion, but he doesn't need to be the guy yet. Like, there's room. But I think Braun Breaker should think, Jake, that he's got more to learn and more to grow and keep working hard. I don't think in his mind or Heyman's mind, they should just think, oh, we'll just coast to the top spot.
No, I don't think anybody should have that opinion, even if you have the top spot. Like, you have to continue to prove yourself. Anybody can backslide if you get lazy about how you do your performances. So, but yeah, I think, Braun has shown, he's got that freak athlete thing about him. Stuff you saw when Kurt Angle was really raw in WWE, or when Brock Lesnar first showed up, where you're just like, oh, this, when this guy hits the high gears, like, he's just different. And I think people notice that. And I do think he's very much more a work in progress on the promo side of things. But I think everybody struggles to get to that, really high level when it comes to the promo game. Like, it's a much more nuanced part of the presentation. Like, and there's a lot more to learn. And so I think I would expect him to, to have some weeks where he really struggles with that on the way to being consistently good, because as we've seen, it takes people a decade to be at the level of a CM Punk or a Cody Rhodes or a Drew McIntyre. Like, these are people who have struggled and failed many times on their way to being where they are now. And so to grade him on their level without allowing him the time to do that, I think is a mistake, personally.
Goodfellow 1422 says when Heyman and Breaker break off, that will be a moment for sure. And they want that. They want to build that up as a big moment. Darrell Freeman chimes in the chat, goes, when you have somebody you've been watching, when someone who you've been watching, Braun Breaker, you haven't seen growth, and you want to see that Anthony Edwards in him and not the cat in him. Some Timberwolves references, Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, where he doesn't give you everything. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You just want Braun to add new things to his game, but you couldn't have a better coach and someone encouraging him than Paul Heyman, who clearly, unless his mind has changed, but believes in him and has hitched his wagon to him. And obviously there was Curtis Axel, which is sort of out of loyalty to Kurt Hennig, and Heyman trying to see if he can't get something out of him, and it just didn't click. Breaker's way past that, but there is no guarantee that just because Heyman's with you, you're going to be a top star, as the Curtis Axel experiment showed. So just don't take anything for granted. You also don't want Braun to top out as Ryback. BJF says, I see Braun as a Ryback type, but better, an upper mid-carder who can challenge for the title but not win it. So I don't know if he's saying Breaker's an upper mid-carder, clarified BJF, or if you think that was Ryback, but Breaker has more. So yeah, but that's what I love about wrestling, Jake. It's the journeys and seeing who catches on, who improves, who leapfrogs others, who puts in the effort, who doesn't take anything for granted, who hits hard on the ceiling. All that stuff is fascinating. Okay, we got some tutorials on this show, and I want to get to this on how the ESPN app works. Again, I had a story on this a couple days ago after the ESPN call, walking people through what the ESPN exec said and how it worked, and trying to simplify what seemed like a not meandering and I don't know. It's tough because there's so many. It's such a splintered setup, Jake, in the technology right now. And you have ESPN Plus, which is not ESPN Unlimited, and then you have ESPN like on demand. And I don't think until this week they were clear that WrestlePalooza won't be airing on the linear ESPN channel. It's going to be college football. Like, oh, we're on ESPN, and people. I mean, I think a lot of people thought, oh, it's going to air on ESPN, and some will, but they're not going to preempt college football in the middle of September for an experimental first WWE event. So
they'd have a staff revolt at ESPN if they preempted college football for a wrestling pay-per-view.
Yep.
I mean, you. I don't know if you watched the Monday Night Football game, but it was clear when they were doing their ad read for WrestlePalooza that most of them were just like, oh my God, why do I have to read this? There was very little enthusiasm or attempt to get the information right or any of that stuff. But Disney's complicated contracts with cable and satellite providers, and the fact that they own Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN Plus, and now this new unlimited service, it's made it an absolute nightmare to try to figure out what, based on what I already subscribe to, like, do I have to pay more for this or not? And I think that that has been a huge fumble from from Disney's perspective, among other fumbles this week, unfortunately. For the Disney
having R-Truth be your spokesman when he is known for flubbing on purpose and by accident, malapropisms and confusing words, and he's the guy you send out for clarity about if you and I don't think they actually did a great job, because if you have a streaming service like DirecTV streaming, which is what I have, ESPN is on it, but that doesn't get you WrestlePalooza. You have to go to the ESPN app and say, I don't have a login for ESPN Unlimited, but I have ESPN on my essentially streaming cable service, DirecTV. So then you go to a page, you choose DirecTV as your affiliate, and then you use them as a portal to get access. That's complicated, and not everybody's done that. But I have, so I'm familiar with the process, but it's confusing. It used to be way more confusing when it was a different button for DirecTV satellite versus DirecTV streaming, and you would go to DirecTV satellite, and if you had streaming, it would block you. People are going to run into confusion on this. And having R-Truth be the person who says it, but he goes, oh, if you already have ESPN on your cable system, you're good. Well, no, you're not, because some of the biggest cable systems do not have video worked out. So people are going to be really pissed off when they go, well, R-Truth told me if I have cable, it's fine. I just have to log in. What does log in mean? And when you say on the app, whatever. I mean, there's going to be growing pains, and I think willing to live with it. But if, I just glance, and Sai T says, my takeaway was that if you still don't understand it, they think you're as dumb as the R-Truth character. I think you can be really smart and tech savvy and run into roadblocks and be frustrated with this, with the confusion over, I have an ESPN Plus subscription. Great. That I got that with Hulu and Disney Plus and get it through my phone, or I got a deal. You think you have it. You don't. So WWE does not want to have a barrier to entry that's confusing for people who, might have a take it or leave it attitude otherwise.
I think I would have an easier time explaining to a non-technical person how to subscribe to a VPN and connect to an out-of-country concentrator and watch the show on Netflix than I would trying to explain to them how they need to access the ESPN app. If they, it's like, well, do you have like one of the 10 cable systems that they already, you already inherit access from? Do you, if you have an ESPN Plus, then you have to upgrade your subscription. It's like, this is clear as mud. And I don't think a lot of people are going to want to put in the effort it takes to watch the show if they run into roadblocks the first time they go to log in. So it's definitely a messaging problem that they're going to need to clean up as ESPN Unlimited rolls out, because it's a fairly new streaming service.
Very new.
And they're still clearly trying to, make contractual changes with their partners and everything else that's required to make this simpler for folks. And it just feels like it's not quite ready for prime time yet, honestly.
Yeah. If they could say, if you have ESPN on your cable or streaming service and you have the ESPN channel where you watch what's live on ESPN, you will not be able to watch WrestlePalooza without downloading to your Roku or smart TV screen the ESPN app. You'll go to the login screen and say that you want to log in using your provider, your cable company login that you use to log in. A lot of people have cable. They don't have a login. They have a cable box and a remote. They don't know what a login is to get to it. And so even when you try to simplify it, and then they could go, everybody has access to ESPN Unlimited if you have a smart TV. But some of you are already paying for it, so don't double pay. Well, now that's part of the conversation. Do you want to include that to avoid frustration? Or are they kind of maybe sneakily hoping some people pay $30 a month for the direct-to-consumer app, even if they have access to ESPN through already having ESPN on their cable service or their streaming service? So it's a mess. I think Saiti is in a chat as being way too hard on people. Like, you don't get it, you're dumb. Someone else said that. This is a mess. And if you want clarity, PWTorch.com, go to the WWE news section. I lay out what does have it, what don't, and I explain how to get it. I think they could have created a slick graphic presentation and aired it 3 times with somebody who's known for being good at explaining things, and R-Truth would not be at the top of my list for that. I think they're trying to hold the audience with entertainment, but I think it was almost waving away flag going, here's someone who's really confused about everything. Let's have him explain something that's going to be very confusing for you. It's a weird choice. But they tried to be entertaining and cute. I would have been more straightforward. Just show a graphic on the screen and say, here's all the systems that if you're a subscriber to one of these, you got it for free. And here's what you do, and show literally someone clicking on an app, do a screen capture video of clicking on it and choosing this option and logging in. It should be the same for everybody. The ESPN app should look the same for everybody. So they didn't do that. But you know what? They're willing to take the blow. I mean, in 2 years, this won't matter. People will eventually figure it out, Jake.
I think they will. What ends up being the least expensive path for you is going to largely depend on what services you already subscribe to. Like, I don't have a terrestrial cable or satellite package, and I was already bundling Disney and Hulu and Max together, and so it ended up working out to be like an extra $10 a month for me to add this new ESPN Unlimited subscription. But is everybody going to have that experience? Like, no. Like, you could easily find yourself having to pay $30 a month for this if if you're not tech savvy enough to know how to listen to Stephanie McMahon and just pay $5 for a VPN and watch it on Netflix, because that would be my first recommendation for people who are faced with paying $30 a month only to watch WWE shows. If you don't watch ESPN for other reasons,
and there are people who don't watch sports. They don't care about ESPN's offerings, or they get their local team and that's all they care about. That's through their local channel. Yeah, Saiti says, we don't know how lucky we are in the UK. Everything on Netflix. One access point, one price point. Yep, for sure. Yeah, so they showed insecurity tonight. I don't think they did a great job explaining it. It's kind of a throwback to the WWE Network days, but I mean, going from I got Peacock, it's not going to be on Peacock, and I have ESPN, but it's not on ESPN. If I tune into ESPN, and I may or may not have to pay extra for it, and it's confusing. Yeah, it's not great, and I think like you said, it's a premature launch. They should have had everybody on board before they did the first WWE event, all the cable systems. And they said they hope around the end of the year they will. But there are going to be some frustrated people in the meantime. And yes, I mean, you can watch it on TV, on a smart TV. You can watch it on your phone or tablet. But you want to make sure people know there's confusion for a long time about this with the WWE Network. You can watch it on TV. You don't have to watch it on a little phone or a tablet.
Right.
They also did not really clarify that. So... yeah. All right. Let's talk about some other things on SmackDown as we kind of get to the final segment here. We had Charlotte and Alexa Bliss retaining the tag titles against Chelsea Green and Alba Fire in the opener. This was a match previously scheduled, but it didn't happen, and now it happened. Charlotte and Bliss went in about 8 minutes. I don't know. Oh, by the way, Miz took over on commentary for the whole show. What did you think of Miz? And I'll talk about the tag title match.
Miz has a very specific energy, and I can handle about 10 minutes of it. And then I was just like, I got to turn down the volume here because he gets to be a little much for me. I'm sure there are people who really like the Miz, but I wasn't a fan of the Miz for 2 hours. That's for sure.
Yeah, Miz is a lot. He was a lot on the Real World when he first got semi-famous, and he's the energy level. 10 minutes. I'm impressed you can handle 10 minutes of him. I couldn't handle about 45 seconds of him. I don't mind his promos, but like on commentary, he brings an energy that's just it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to listen to him. Ryan Solari goes, I think Miz was okay. Goodfella 1422. Miz did not do a good job of balance. Way too much all the time. Sadler version 3 says, did anyone else think Miz was extremely annoying on commentary? The guy was yelling every other sentence. He was annoying and not in a heel way. Derek Mitchell says, I think Miz did a good job portraying the traditional heel commentators. I don't know. What did he do? He endorsed something and then he said it was bad at some point. I can't remember what that was. I don't think he was very good.
It almost felt like a satire of heel commentators.
Yep.
Like it was just like everything all at once. Just loud and saying everything he could to get under Cole's skin. I mean, if he would have done a better job of modulating himself, like if he would have brought the energy down and back up, I think it would have been a lot more tolerable. But it was just like, turned up to 11 the entire time.
Perfectly put. Yeah. JC Scooby says Miz needs to talk like a normal, like on his reality show. Totally agree. I think he should go in a different mode on color commentary. Cy T says, best thing I can say about Miz is he's not Booker T. Derek Mitchell says, I'd prefer the Miz any day of the week, every week, if over Booker T on NXT. Adam Kidd says, Miz made Booker look like JR. Ryan Solari goes, Miz just went over the top when Carmella was wrestling. And BJF goes, I'm missing Wade. And I'm like, I'm right here. Oh, you mean Wade Barrett? Yeah, I miss him too. Sadler Version 3 goes, I take Booker 10 out of 10 times over Miz, LOL. Hard to disagree with you guys. Miz screaming every sentence was unbearable. JC Scooby, bring back Wade Barrett. What's the story on Wade Barrett? He claims he earlier this year asked for time off, and this was planned. There's some speculation otherwise, but
he said in his message that this was planned 9 months ago. I'm like, well, did he have a baby? Like, is that what happened here? Like, did he take time off because he's a new father? Like, that was my first thought, but I mean, obviously he didn't confirm that, so I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just might have wanted a break for who knows. It could be all kinds of reasons, and I mean, WWE's been better about that with people. I mean, there's actual time off to do other things. It's a positive about this Levesque era. All right, so Charlotte and Alexa against Chelsea and Alba Fire. What do you think?
It's just kind of there. I mean, I wish it would have been more because I think the Secret Harvest is actually quite entertaining the vast majority of the time. It just felt like this was a match that they wanted to get out of the way. Like it didn't seem like they have major plans for Chelsea and Alba. I worry about Piper Niven. We haven't seen her in a while. They haven't really acknowledged what's going on with her. I hope she's not seriously hurt or something along those lines. But I think the match was okay, but it was cut more than in half by a commercial, and so you kind of felt like you missed the entire middle
Yeah.
portion of it, and so it was just a couple of minutes on TV, so not much to really say or do about it. It was just okay for what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, then we had some drama with the Street Profits, BFAB saying, "Hey, you guys are going to have disputes, but you're still brothers. You got your team together forever." Dawkins seemed a little less eager to reconcile, if maybe that's overstating it, but just get along and hear the words than Montez Ford did. And then Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, I don't know which we're supposed to call him at this point, showed up and started kind of recruiting Dawkins, and then they attacked both of them, Eric Rowan and Bo Dallas. What did you think of tonight, and what do you think kind of the arc with the Profits?
They've tried this before, where they've teased splitting up the Street Profits. They tried turning them heel and then brought them back babyface. I don't necessarily know what the future is for them. Dawkins doesn't seem like he'd be a good fit in the Wyatt faction, so I don't think they're recruiting him in that way. I think it's more just to to get the reaction they want out of him and potentially split up the profits. I do think if they're going to get anything out of either Dawkins or Ford as a singles act, they kind of got to do it now. Like it seems like they're at the point in their careers where they either have to commit to this tag team for the duration, or they got to see what they can do as single stars now. So I'm not against the idea of them splitting up. It seems like they've kind of gone through a number of arcs now where it seems like now is the time. So I like Ford a lot. He's got a lot of charisma. He's obviously very, he's very athletic and strong in the ring. So yeah, there might be something there. And I think Dawkins has improved considerably, but I'm kind of at the end of my wits with this Wyatt faction and their involvement with the Street Profits. It feels like they've been spinning their wheels for a while now, and they just got to make a decision on what they're going to do with them.
Yeah, I think they're putting two acts that have been creatively abandoned and mishandled this year in a situation where they're paying a price for that. Like how many times are we going to tell a story that it looks like Ford and Dawkins aren't getting along and then abandon it and pretend it never happened, and get fans' hopes up who want to see them as singles stars, or at least get a chance to be stars as singles wrestlers, and then have them go, no, we're just going to use them as a team. They're both 35 years old. They are at a point where, it's kind of almost now or never. I'm not super sold on either of them being singles wrestlers at a high level, but I'm not against them doing. Look what they've done to Jay and Jimmy as singles wrestlers. There's Edge and Christian broke up and had good runs, but once you're a tag wrestler for a long time, you're kind of seen that way. But I think there's a chance still they can be, serviceable U.S. title, IC title level singles wrestlers that can freshen things up, and then their reunion might mean more when it happens. So we'll see. But
yeah. It's odd because I think Ford looks like he would have the most potential on paper, but there's also this sort of, I don't even know how to phrase it, like a try hard aspect to him, where it looks like he's always putting in a tremendous amount of effort, and it almost kind of works against the natural sort of cool factor he has about him.
He wrestles like Miz does commentary.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment.
It's just too much. Yeah.
So I think there's obviously work to be done with both of them, but I think there's potential there. It's just among the embarrassment of talent that the company has, are they going to be able to stand out? And I don't have that answer at this point.
On the Wyatt 6 side of things, Sadler Version 3 goes, I think they need to decide what Bo Dallas is. Is he a snarky instigator or the pseudo-monster heel in a mask that no-sells moves? I'm more interested in the first option, but pick one and go. Saiti says the Wyatts feel like a 2025 B team with Bo Dallas again and more numbers. What do you think about where the Wyatt 6 can go in an ideal situation, I guess, or a better push, a more consistent push, because they were just so creatively abandoned after so much hype. It's going to take some work to get people reinvested in them.
Yeah, they showed up and they were murdering people, and then it became what felt like an attempt at an exploration of grief. And then you had injury that derailed Uncle Howdy, which sort of put the faction on ice. And now it feels like they're searching for an identity. Like they don't really know what to do with any of these guys. And so I think it very much feels like an also ran faction. But I think it's, a function of the fact that, he got hurt at the wrong time, and it put the story that they were telling on hold. And now it doesn't really make sense to tell that story anymore. And they're just sort of searching for something to do with them. And I don't know if that's going to occur naturally. It's going to depend on somebody, in creative deciding that they have an idea for them and really pushing for it. Because right now it seems like they're just, playing the provocateur that, that they had, somebody who just got released, and I forget, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Karen Cross.
Kind of a similar, kind of a similar.
You're right. Very
function
much,
to that character, and so I think it's they have to find something more interesting for them than that if they want this thing to stick, because you can't have the spooky faction that just kind of plays the instigator backstage and have it feel like a big deal. It very much feels like a background character.
It is weird. Hand struck me, but it's so obvious that Bo Dallas is just picking up the scripts that might have been written for Karrion Kross. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Nia Jax comes out, mocks Tiffany Stratton's catchphrase "Tiffy time" and says Tiffy's obnoxious. And I wrote in my report at PWTorch.com, is she turning babyface? Because the whole Tiffy time thing is obnoxious. Then Tiffy came out and responded. Her vocals are better. As she was coming out, she said everyone is sick of her obsessing about her. Tiffany said, once Jax anywhere near the title, she's the one and only women's champion. She said there's nothing Jax can do or say about it. And then she dropped the microphone like she had just said the best quip ever and headed to the ring. Then Jade Cargo comes out and attacks two security guys or officials unprovoked. And Miz laughs. He's a heel. Okay. Cole didn't really act outraged. He kind of seemed like he was backing Miz. That isn't it funny that Jay just hit two men, hourly wage workers, and there's going to be no consequences. I think it's just such a dumb trope in wrestling these days. It's overdone. But then at the end of the segment, I alluded to this earlier, Miz goes, "You're not allowed to touch officials." So he laughed about it as a goof, and then he got something in his headset going, "Hey, no, you got to take the stand. Jade's a babyface and bury her." But it also is too true. You aren't allowed to. So that's just a case of WWE not expecting fans to take anything seriously and not really buy into anything that's going on. But you know what happens when you do that for decades, which WWE's been doing for 20 years, give or take? You get fans chanting one more time when Lesnar's giving F5s to Corey Graves, because fans have been conditioned that to believe that what they want to see are moments, viral moments, big finishing moves, and they haven't gotten them invested enough in the story to be like, no, I don't want to see Brock beat up Corey Graves. Corey Graves annoys me sometimes, but he's a good guy. Brock's an awful person. And so we get the one more time chance. No matter if someone, babyface heel, is attacking somebody, you get that. And part of that is we saw, and it's a small thing, but it all adds up in terms of the tone you set. WWE trains their audience essentially how to react to things when Miz is laughing at Jade kicking people and then doing a 180 and going, "You're not allowed to attack officials later." It's not even, with all of Miz's time in the business, he doesn't even have the right instincts or the right guidance to know how to handle that situation, because it's so tropey and lazy to just do it in the first place. Jake, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they get lost in their own meta sometimes, where they, they're not focused on creating a believable, sort of contained universe that all the characters live in, and they, they're playing to the social media audience, or they're playing to whoever to try and create those moments, and it leads people to it's, I guess it's going to be impossible to put the toothpaste back in the tube to where people are like, "Oh, this is real." That's long gone. But you can at least frame it consistently in your own storytelling, where the people on the show are attempting to take it seriously. They're not supposed to be aware of the meta. That's right. Not something you would have. That it's just like perpetual fourth wall breaking to the point where it's lost all meaning. And every character on your show is Deadpool, and I think that's kind of a waste of everybody's time sometimes.
Totally. Yep. And like there's certain phrases that I just don't like shades of gray. It means different things to different people. You can argue with somebody, and then it turns out you guys look at it, you actually agree. You just interpret that term differently. I feel that way about kayfabe is dead. I just don't think anyone should ever say that phrase again, because I don't think most people understand what they mean or what other people mean when it's said. I will say that if WWE starts now, they will start getting benefit. If they start now protecting this realm as a sporting event with consequences that are consistent, there's actions have consistent consequences, little tongue twister. And if they do that and they treat it like a sport and they stop acting, like you said, they shouldn't be aware of, there should be nothing about what happens where the announcers are thinking about, will this be a viral moment? Like, wrestlers shouldn't aspire for that. Logan Paul can, but there can be an exception here and there, of course, but it shouldn't be the rule. It should be an exception, very specific to the context. But wrestlers should be talking about winning and losing and titles meaning something. And there should be, when security get beat up, people, it's just fun, Wade, who cares? Right, because you've been trained to look at it that way. But it undercuts the investment when there's hourly workers who are there to do their job, and baby faces and heels indiscriminately beat them up, and there's never a consequence to it. It makes you not take seriously that this world or realm is anything but a comedy, essentially a sketch comedy show of sorts, where crazy zany things happen that you're not supposed to take seriously. And it gives
you that like mockumentary feel, like The Office,
yes,
where people are looking and winking at the camera, where it's just like, okay, like nobody on the show is even taking the show seriously. And
exactly.
I don't think that's the message that is going to lead to to people taking your heavy moments seriously.
Exactly. But they still book heavy moments. So they still want it. They want heels to have heat, because they do angles all the time that historically for a century have been designed and evolved to get heat on heels, but they extinguish it left and right with commentary. Like they're doing this formula, has stood the test of time and is smart, but then they extinguish it and undercut it because they think, well, no, we don't want people to think we take it seriously, or everybody knows it's fake. Well, everybody always knew it was fake. I mean, people were more able to be in denial about it, but I mean, trust me, adults in the 1970s looked down at wrestling fans because they said it's fake. And wrestling fans who defended themselves in the 1970s about it said, I don't care if it is or not, I like it. Or it's not as fake as you think it is. Because wrestling promoters, Bill Watts, Vern Gagne, whoever, they gave you something to believe in. They cared enough to give you a defense where you could, while you're watching it, suspend your disbelief and not feel like an utter fool. And I think if WWE, so this whole thing of kayfabe's dead because of something in 1985 or something in 1995 or something in podcasts, or no, it's people have this mistaken notion that before they were born, everyone thought wrestling was real. And the Fall Guys book, written in the 30s, talks about how the newspapers that mocked how fake wrestling was when they were doing boxing results and talking about wrestling. And sports reporters literally 100 years ago were snubbing their nose at how fake pro wrestling was. So kayfabe was dead from the second somebody ran the ropes or the whatever. I mean, it's such a silly thing to say, like it's some new thing.
You can find, historical articles from the 40s and 50s talking about Gorgeous George, and it was all clearly covered tongue in cheek. Like, yes, the cat's been out of the bag forever and ever. I don't know where this notion came from that, the 70s was legit, man. Like, I don't know, or whatever the decade was before you were born when wrestling was supposed to be real. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And kayfabe is dead can mean different things, but what it is an excuse to do a really sloppy job presenting a simulated sport in a way that immerses people in the stories you're telling. That's all it is. It's an excuse for bad promoting tactics and laziness. It's trying to justify something, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want people to not take it seriously, then don't take your presentation seriously. If you want to give people the world to immerse themselves in, like great movies and TV shows, and then you take yourself seriously, you do the detail work, you present it with a straight face, and people will buy in, and they will cry, and they will screech, and they will go nuts. Whatever reaction you want out of them, you get people in a movie theater, they know it's not real, but if it's a believable story, they'll cry. They'll feel the antagonists. They'll sympathize or empathize with the antagonist, and they'll feel the emotions that the director wants. And you don't give up on that. Now, is it too late? No, it's too late to have people react that way tomorrow, but it's not too late to have people start to react that way in 2 months. And then in 2 years, you're getting a different response. People aren't chanting one more time. They're not singing along to heel songs. But it really has to be a 3 to 5 year plan to get even 85% back of what you had if you hadn't made this mistake in the first place. But you keep doing it, and you're going to have a whole generation of fans who don't know any other way. And they're going to look back and feel so bad for fans of this era that they didn't get the type of immersive peak experience that comes from a more straight approach to presenting the product. It doesn't mean they have to end it's real in their books when they write books or on podcasts, but opening and closing credits. Let us believe. And when you're a top star, don't put yourself out on social media in a way that undercuts the character you're playing on TV. Just don't go out of your way to do it. Leave some mystique. Are you really like that or not? Don't go out of your way to dispel that. Because it's not like movie actors playing a role in a one-off movie or a TV series for 2 or 3 years. It's pretty much who you want people to believe you are. And that's why Matt McCarthy and I always compared it to stand-up comedy. There are stand-up comedians. Yeah. You don't know what they're really like, but they don't put anything out there that contradicts their on-stage persona that has made them millions and sells tickets. And that's how pro wrestlers should look at themselves.
Well, it's the biggest advantage you have in a fictional environment is you have full control of the presentation. You know, you're the biggest weapon you have is your ability to manipulate the crowd's emotional state and with how they feel about things. Mm-hmm. And when you undermine your own credibility with the way you present your own show, well, then you're losing your grip on the audience, and they become their own character, so to speak, where they end up playing a part in the show. And I don't think that's really what the goal is here. You're trying to have the audience in the palm of your hand, not having them driving you around. I think
exactly
that's where they get lost.
And I mean the turning point or the acceleration point maybe for me was John Cena standing in the middle of the ring on Raw going, "I hope we entertained you tonight." And it's like, you're not an MC of a sketch comedy show or a stand-up comedy routine. You're a pro wrestler trying to win fights. You don't break that fourth wall, so to speak, and say our job is to entertain you. You should have. You don't have to believe it in real life, but you want in every instance on television to make it seem like the fans are privileged to pay money to see you fight for really important titles and settle grudges. It should feel like a privilege to be there, not the wrestlers need to satisfy your entertainment desires. That's just crazy to frame it that way. And it's why I say Cena, among top guys, is one of the lowest wrestling IQs I've ever seen. That's overstating it. He's in the lower tier of top successful guys in terms of doing things that created a headwind that were either selfish or counterproductive. And a lot of that is Vince McMahon, influencing him. But he never outgrew bad habits. And it just blows my mind that you would think you should constantly talk about how your job is to entertain the fans, because that makes it less entertaining to watch wrestlers if you think they're pathetically just trying to earn your approval. It should feel like, you want the buzz that you get from going to a peak UFC event, which is, I can't believe I get to be here to see this fight. Not, these fighters better entertain me or I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally agree.
Sami Zayn, Carmelo Hayes. Oh, anything more on Nia Jax, Tiffany, and Jade, by the way? I kind of strayed off into a tangential but related topic.
It seemed like Tiffany wasn't cleared for anything. She did not get involved in anything physically. I'm assuming she's in the maybe the concussion protocol, perhaps, coming off of last week's show. So hopefully she's cleared by the time SmackDown comes around next week with that announced match. The promos were not great all the way around there. Nia wasn't bad, but Tiffany comes across as really inauthentic as a babyface, and they've never really gotten her over that hump. And that continues now. So I think maybe next week could be a title change, possibly. It seems like they've been holding off on pulling the trigger on that, but I think that division needs a bit of a reset, personally.
I think her dropping in the microphone was like kind of smug and self-satisfied. Just like, ooh, guess what I just said, and drop the mic, and it's like, oh, that was so good. It's like, no, it wasn't. Get over yourself.
No.
I'm sure she's instructed to do it. I mean, nothing. When I criticize wrestlers, I'm criticizing the performance, and I know it's a team effort, and sometimes they're doing something they don't want to do. So I don't mean to prescribe any personal judgment. On Cena, he has agency. Tiffany doesn't. So I mean, Tiffany, it's just doing what she's told to do. Cena has had agency for 25 years or 20 years to do what he wants. So I hold him more accountable than others. Sami Zayn, Carmelo Hayes, 16 minutes. What do you think of the match? U.S. title open challenge.
I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was my favorite match on the show. I thought they delivered in the ring. Yeah. It seems like Melo's another one of those guys on the bubble where, I don't think they're in a position where they want to have him win a title at the moment, but it seems like they are interested in keeping him relevant and pushing him. I think The Miz is kind of a boat anchor around him at this point. I think he would do well to associate with somebody else, but maybe they'll be able to wrap up that story here in the next month or two and move him on to something better. But he's a guy with a lot of upside. I continue to think he's got charisma. He's getting more consistent in the ring after a spat of inconsistency, where he was having some issues with mistakes and timing stuff and everything else going on in the ring. So I think he's next year could be a big year for Carmelo Hayes if they play their cards right.
Last 2 points. Damian Priest sent Kit Wilson through a wall that was clearly set up just to be a wrestler to be thrown through it. A little bit better than average as far as that goes, but still pretty obviously faked. Not an actual wall that existed 2 weeks ago in that building.
The 2x4 lazily falling to the ground after he went through the wall was quite funny, I thought.
And they had like giant black paper clips holding the 2 sections of the wall together. I don't know what those black things were.
It was taped. I don't even know what that
tape?
was.
Yep.
It was. Yeah, it looked rough, and even Aldis looked unimpressed by the entire thing when it was over with.
I mean, if you can't make it look real, just don't do it. Because what upside is there to a fake wall? I mean, oh my God, Priest you're thinking, oh, Priest manhandled poor Kit Wilson. He's a badass. And you're like, oh wait, all you're thinking about is how fake that wall is and how minor league WWE is and how a high school play could have done a better job on with their stage set.
I mean, an infant could have knocked through that 1/4-inch drywall. It doesn't even look impressive. It's weird that they continue to do that. I don't understand it either.
He can shove them into whatever. I don't even want. There's things you can shove people into that make loud noises and fall over that look like they were naturally there. But the fake wall thing, it's just ridiculous. BJF says, it was a great wall, a solid wall. Lots of people are saying it. Sports Illustrated is saying it. Yeah. All right. Then finally, the Solo Sikoa vignette. Talking up Tongaloa. It's a heavy lift a little bit. You're the last guy standing. I need to be loyal to you and help you get a title. Is he just the next Sammy U.S. Open challenger, or is something else going on here?
That was my thought. I think we're just building to Solo going after Sammy, and maybe he'll send the remaining members of his family after him first, and then he'll be the mid-level final boss. I don't know what you want to call him, but he's still a believer in him and being the boss of something. So yeah, it makes sense to have him send the other members of the family after him first. But I don't know. I think Solo's in kind of a weird place. He's been kind of orphaned away from the rest of what the Usos and Roman are doing, and it doesn't feel like the characters that they brought in as a supporting cast for him have really helped him much. Jacob Fatu's already split off and moved on to other stuff, and so yeah, I think Solo has improved as an act, but I think he's a bit miscast as a faction leader. I think he would do well to do something else eventually if they can find a way to extricate him from this.
Yeah. When Solo's in a main event, it feels like it's off peak season. He has that vibe. He's not peak season main eventer. Yeah. All right. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. I'll be hosting the AEW All Out post pay-per-view roundtable with Todd Martin and Rich Fan tomorrow. We'll also be doing exclusive VIP content after WrestlePalooza this weekend. Go VIP, unlock a commercial-free version of all our free shows like this one, available on Apple Podcasts. You can also subscribe through Spotify or Patreon or your native Apple podcast app using your Apple account. You can get a full VIP membership and unlock over 35 years of podcasts, hundreds of retro radio shows, nearly 2,000 back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, and also an ad-free version of PWTorch.com with access to the new newsletter with exclusive content every week. It is a mouthful. There's a lot. You do not have to read and listen to everything to get your money's worth, but there is a lot for you when you sign up to dive in, learn wrestling history, and keep up on our brand of wrestling coverage. PWTorch.com/GoVIP takes you to the information page and also lays out, I think more clearly than R-Truth and WWE has done with ESPN, all the different ways that you can gain access to VIP content. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Thanks to Jake Barnett, my co-host. Check out his work over at ProWrestling.net and subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Boom podcast. And we will talk to you all this weekend. We got a busy tomorrow, a busy Saturday. Thanks, everybody, for your support. Thanks for the chat. Wonderful job engaging with our conversation. And we will talk to you all later on.